Hello and welcome to Brain Says Strange Things. I'm Patrick, this is my brother Jordan, and this is the podcast where we talk about horror movies. This week we thought it would be a good idea to take a look at a couple of contemporary horror films. We realize we've spent a lot of time over the past few months talking about older horror movies, which we love, so we thought it was a good idea to take a look at some recent films. We selected a couple of movies that were released in 2013. Both of which have garnered kind of a lot of buzz. I've heard good things about these films, and they were both conveniently streaming on Netflix. So we watched the 2012-2013 remake of Maniac, starring Elijah Wood, a movie I'd really been looking forward to seeing. And we also watched a very strange cannibal family film. Not a family film, a film about a family of cannibals. Called We Are What We Are. I love that title. That one's actually also a remake, which I only found out recently, but we watched the American version of that film. So both technically remakes.
I think the idea is that we want to do like good ones, good recent ones, not just pick a random one.
Yeah,
we want to do like contemporary ones, like recently, last year or so, but we also want to pick out ones that at least had some sort of positive notoriety, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was the idea.
Yes. So a lot of I've heard a lot of good things about both of these movies, so we checked them out this evening. We watched Maniac first. If you've seen the original Maniac, you know it's a pretty basic story. And story-wise, this new one is more or less the same. This creepy loner is stalking women in the city and murdering them by scalping them. That's his thing. He scalps these women. He puts the scalps onto a collection of mannequins that he has, and there's just a lot of weird, creepy, psychological stuff going on with this guy. Now, the original film although the story was similar, it had a very different look and tone to it, I think, than this new movie.
You've seen that one?
Yeah. So the first film, the killer there is this kind of big, kind of oafish, greasy, very unappealing.
Did you notice that that's exactly who she explains?
Yes.
That she's going to meet? Okay.
Yeah, there's little nods to the original throughout this movie. But stylistically, it's very much its own thing. This movie is much sleeker looking, much crisper, sharper, and the casting of Elijah Wood is a very different kind of killer in some ways than what we saw in the original film. But that's the basic story. It's basically a slasher movie. And important to note that the one major change in this new version is that it's told from the point of view almost entirely, except for a few moments.
They cheat a lot.
From the killer. Well, they don't just cheat. I think they deliberately take you out of that a few times as well. I mean, they do. They pull the camera around.
Right. There are scenes where you actually see him, But there's also... Okay, get into that.
Yeah, Okay, well, so that's basically the conceit of the movie. So what was your kind of impression of Maniac?
I found it silly. I did not like it at all.
Okay.
I don't know. It wasn't particularly frightening. It wasn't... I don't know what the message of the movie was supposed to be. I don't know what I'm supposed to get out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you roll your eyes that it's not supposed to have a message, but...
Yeah. I mean, essentially it's a slasher film. I don't know that they're trying to make a larger point, although maybe they are.
There's got to be some sort of idea behind it, I guess. I don't know. The only thing that sounded interesting is like it's told from his POV, but then they totally cheat with that stuff too. Like
a little bit.
Well, there's scenes when he's like driving in the car and he's like just staring at her, and you're like seeing the girl like next to him, and it's basically just like a shot of her. So he's not like staring at her as he's driving the car. You know, there's little tiny.
They hold it a bit too long.
Yeah, it's like keep your eyes on the road, man.
Sure,
but that also detracts from the scenes where they're definitely trying to do that.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments in the movie where they simply...
Like those important moments where it wants you to kind of take a step outside of its body.
Like
those would have stood out more if they would have stuck to it more.
Yeah, if they
mean,
okay.
It just felt really gimmicky. And it is a gimmick, I guess. but I feel like it wasn't really executed well.
Okay.
I kind of feel like they just probably shouldn't have done that.
Okay.
Do it with Elijah Wood as the Maniac. Because the other part that I found distracting was his like voiceover. You don't see him like talking. Mm-hmm. It didn't match. It looked like he was just. It sounded like he was just recording it while he's watching the movie. Mm-hmm. You know, it doesn't really. You don't really feel like you're the killer essentially, which is what they want you to feel. I think so.
Yeah.
I think it kind of failed on that level too, and I don't know. There's not really a story there. Mm-hmm. He's killing people, which I guess I could be fine with, but I don't know. I didn't get anything out of this movie. Mm-hmm. I do not understand where the hype is coming from.
Mm-hmm. I do to a certain extent. I think when we got done watching the movie, you said you did not love it. And
well, I was kind of joking because there's that girl who always said that she loves everything.
Actor, one of the characters in the movie says, "I love it. I love this. I love that."
Instantly,
the main girl in the movie. But you said you did not love it, and I think I would come at it from a different way and say I didn't hate it. You know what I mean? In the way that you're saying,
I did not love it.
No, I think we're kind of at the same place in this movie. Although I think I liked it more than you did. I would say that there was nothing that I really didn't like about it. At least nothing major. I agree with all the points you're saying. Even the conceit of filming it as a POV movie, I don't think that was really necessary. I think it did rob the movie of a certain kind of tension you might have had it been filmed in a more normal style without really adding anything significant. So it set it apart from the original Maniac, but I don't know what it really added to it. In terms of cheating that a little bit, I thought they did a pretty good job in this movie. I thought they cheated it about as much as like the first-person shooter style movies tend to cheat it.
They all cheat a little bit, because you're not actually filming through someone's eyes. So
yeah,
I know.
Any movie with any kind of gimmick or conceit, there's gonna be moments. They kind of invite that kind of hyper criticism of like,
yes.
There's a place.
So if they didn't do that, if they didn't use that as a selling point, then you're not going to be distracted.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but given that they made that choice. I don't think they cheated it too much. At least not enough to throw me out of it. Yeah, when he's driving the car and he looks over at the unconscious girl, okay, he probably looks over at her for a bit too long. But I would also say in defense of this movie...
He's a maniac.
Yeah, and it's also not filmed in like a documentary style. It's not like a found footage movie. So we're not seeing like... an impersonal recording of the events that happen.
Right.
We're in the mind of someone whose hold on reality is tenuous at best. Mm-hmm. So I do think even some of
he could be like remembering it wrong.
Exactly. Well, I think there's some points in this movie where that's clearly the case.
Well, right. He's seeing his mom on the street. His mom is dead, but he's seeing her.
So I think some of the cheats can kind of be excused that way. So I agree that it probably didn't need that conceit of being almost entirely from his point of view. But given that they made that decision, I think they did a pretty good job with it. You know what I mean? It didn't distract me as much as it did you.
Yeah, it did for me a lot.
Yeah, it was fine.
I thought it just kind of fell into I thought it was going to be something really starkly different. The way that it sounded like... Mm-hmm. Because why I wanted to do like
different than the original Maniac, you mean?
Just like different from horror movies that have come out nowadays. It was just considered better, I guess. It had gotten better reviews, and I don't watch a lot of I haven't seen a lot of the new ones that have come out, just because I do kind of have that. I don't know, I'm a little biased because I think there's not a lot of good stuff out there. There's good stuff out there, but there's not as much as there used to be. Mm-hmm. So then I picked this one. And I was just kind of let down a little bit, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think, I kind of felt the same way as you, too, because I wanted to see this movie a lot. I heard a lot about Maniac. Mm-hmm. And I think it's tough with contemporary horror movies, because I do kind of agree with you. I think it's not a very fertile genre right now. There's not a lot of examples of great films coming out in the horror genre. So I think when something like Maniac comes out, which I would say looks beautifully stylistically, has a really great score, is a well put together film, I would even say as a slasher, I thought it was a good film. I really did. I didn't think it was a bad film. I think you kind of did. I didn't.
Yeah.
But when something comes out of a certain level of quality, it's so far above most of what's out there that it tends to perhaps get overpraised.
I just don't
and that
like-
kind of can play into your expectations. But I think that happened with you with your Next as well. You're like, what? What's the big deal with this movie? It's like, well, it's a well-made film.
But I also don't base my reviews just on what I was
no,
expecting.
but
when
I
get
think
out of it.
I think that
are
plays
sort
into
of-
your expectations a little bit.
I'm
Like,
sure it does. But I mean, with a movie like this, and you hear like, oh, it's so much different. They're doing something different with.
Well, I
this.
didn't hear so much of the different though. I mean that I think you're more interested in like a unique idea,
Yeah.
whereas like I can recognize this is just like a well crafted film, not perfectly done.
Because I mean, you hear about that stuff, and they kind of fall into the old traps that they always do. Where what I hate in the new horror movies, they don't do in old horror movies, is the sound of when they're like killing someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's way too loud. It's way too graphic. I don't mean graphic like I don't want to hear it, but it's just it stands out way too much when they're just like he's cutting in the person's like whoosh, 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 like all the time. Is that just me?
I think so.
Okay, well,
I mean, I know what you're talking about, but
Yeah.
I think
I don't think no, old horror movies didn't do it that.
No, they didn't. But I've heard directors talking on commentary tracks on old like 80s films, like, oh yeah, if we were doing this now, we would,
Yeah. I don't know. I like the simpler sound design
Yeah.
a little better. Like maybe like the less you hear. Maybe you hear a murder scene where you don't hear the knife going to the person. You never hear that. It's always just like they need you to hear it, and it's like stands out. I don't know. I don't like that, and this movie did that as well. So I don't know. It makes it seem kind of like a cartoon almost, and not like realistic. And then the other problem they had is that there seemed like at the end they're kind of like scrambling for a message,
Okay.
and they didn't really have anything to say.
How
Like,
so?
when he's like, all right, so what is the point of his killing?
I think the
he had a
old-
fucked
oh,
up childhood.
Yeah, I mean that's
He had
the
mother
the
issues?
origin motivation of the killer. But I don't think this movie was reaching for any kind of grand statements that I could see. I think it was just trying to make like a well constructed slasher.
Okay. I don't know. I want something out of it at the end. I guess I don't know. I was bored by it.
Yeah.
I found it annoying. I mean, I guess I would say I wasn't bored by it, but I was annoyed by it. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I think I would default to a mild recommendation on this one though. Again, there's nothing that bothered me about it to the extent that bothered you. However, I do feel like there was something missing. There was something keeping it from being like a great horror film, a great slasher. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was, well made. I thought it was a fun movie to watch on a Sunday afternoon. So I would give it a mild recommendation. I'm not going to join the, chorus of
So
intense praise.
do you
that
think
it's
this
got,
movie
but
is
I
just
liked
trying
it.
to like recreate an old school horror movie?
I think what it was
because
trying
there's
to
a
do,
lot of things that are distracting.
I think what it was trying to do was no, not necessarily create like an old school horror movie, but just kind of to do kind of like what Rob Zombie did with his Halloween remake. Just kind of do a riff on a familiar story in a different style. Like that's kind of what I liked about the movie, in that it did have such a different style than the original Maniac, even though it was kind of the same story. It was very much its own movie.
What about like weird coincidences in horror movies and like, like when
I don't know. I feel like
why when they're running down the street, why is there nobody on the street?
No.
Why is it completely bare and they're like screaming for help and no one does anything? And he goes crazy in his apartment every night, destroying things, hitting things with lamps.
Yep.
And like there are no neighbors essentially. No one notices. I don't know. I think they should address some of this stuff if they're trying to go for kind of a serious.
Yeah.
I don't want to say a serious message, but they want you to be terrified by this maniac.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know. I was thinking about all that stuff.
Yeah.
It just kind of it did
Yeah.
feel kind of like a cartoon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe my threshold is too low, but I would say everything that you're pointing out are things that kept it from being a great film, but they didn't make it a bad film for me.
Okay.
I thought those were all very minor, very common offenses. Like at one point you said, doesn't she have a cell phone? Look, if you're gonna watch a movie made after 1995,
No, they showed she was on her cell phone.
Yeah, but you've just gotta put aside the cell phone thing. Otherwise, you might as well never watch a whole new horror movie anymore.
You know, if they hadn't shown her on her cell phone, I never would have even thought of it.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like these are, for me, very minor offenses that kept it from being a perfect film. But I don't think it made it a bad movie. So I didn't love it, but I liked it more than you did.
Okay.
You know.
I just didn't find anything in there that I loved, so.
No, I didn't either. That's why I didn't love it.
Or that I liked, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but I thought it was well made. You know, I enjoyed it. It didn't
I like
really,
the sound. I like the music.
Yeah,
and stuff.
it didn't really lose me or anything like that. It was so. I
The
guess
the score is good. I'll say that.
yeah. I guess it balances out as an okay movie for between the two of us. You know, neither one of us loved it. I liked it a little bit more than you did.
But the evening wasn't a total waste.
Okay.
Because
So the next movie that we watched was We Are What We Are. And a much different film in some ways, although also, you know, a movie that essentially brings you inside the lives and the minds of the killers. This is a really weird movie about a very strange family who live kind of an isolated existence, but amongst this small town.
they're in the Catskills.
Yeah, the mother dies under sort of mysterious circumstances at the beginning of the film.
She dies of unknown causes, but
Yeah.
you'll find out by the end.
And that creates turmoil in this family because the eldest daughter, so it's a father, 2 daughters, and a son who
They
are
basically have like a ritual
Yes.
where they cannibalize.
Yes.
Is that like, can you use
they
that as a
kill
verb?
they kill and eat people in this very ritualistic way.
Yeah, and they say like the mom was the one that
Yeah.
always did the killing.
Yes,
They
so now-
keep the victims
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
So I guess probably so the meat is fresh when they want to
the
do
way
it.
to do it.
I suppose.
Yeah. So
One
now
would
that the mom
imagine.
has died, the eldest daughter has to inherit this role, and
Yep.
the 2 daughters have very conflicting feelings about doing this, as you might imagine. So the story, they're kind of the protagonists of the story. These.
That's what I liked about
Okay.
it. Is that you're
See,
kind of
you're
rooting.
an idea guy. You like unique ideas, and I do too. So that's basically the story of this movie. This is a much more restrained film than Maniac. Not a lot of gore. Maniac was very gory, very somber, quiet tone. So you like this movie?
I liked it a lot.
Okay.
I like the fact that you're kind of rooting for these killers. And
It's very interesting.
they're kind of on the line. I guess the girl's probably like 17 or 18. The main girl,
Yeah.
who's taking over the killing.
Yep, and the younger one they say is about 14.
She's
I think.
14, they say. And then they
Very
have
young boy.
And then they have a young boy who doesn't really factor that much
Yeah.
into it. I like that idea that you can't really tell which ways this story is going to go, basically. I could tell you the ending, but you'd still want to see it because you want to know how they got there. And also with like cannibal movies, there's always a dinner table scene, right? But the dinner table scene has to be like top of the line in
Okay.
those movies. And I thought every scene where they're sitting down for dinner worked great. I thought it was awesome.
Okay.
I thought every different scene there was something else going on. Like you do see them eat people. I mean, they make it into a stew.
Yeah, so it's not like they're chowing on a hand or a foot.
Right.
Well, it's the end of the movie is
Right.
a little different, but it doesn't look like people. You don't see a lot of the killing as it happens. They don't linger on the cutting up of the body. It's actually kind of beautifully shot, that sequence. You know, it's very almost elegant and like I said,
Where
very
they're like
restrained.
preparing the body with
Yeah,
lipstick.
this
and stuff.
this is definitely going more for the get under your skin, be disturbed by the idea of it horror, rather than the be horrified by the gore and blood type horror. Although the gore and blood eventually shows up in this movie, but very restrained approach, very different.
I like the message where they're. I mean, it doesn't have to have a message like that, but I like the one in this one where it's like you don't realize what it's like until you do it. So the daughter just kind of went along with eating these. I mean, everybody knew that they were eating people. They're just kind of going along with it because it was a ritual carried forth from generations and generations. And then finally, when she has to be the one that has to actually kill the person,
Then it becomes
to eat
different.
then the whole thing changes.
Sure.
And then there's the next youngest daughter. she sees that happen. She's like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, and she's kind of the most moral character in the film. She's the least into the cannibalism, the younger daughter.
But the oldest daughter,
the old one is kind of right on the line. She's like the most interesting
character, though. Yeah, because she kind of goes back and forth a little bit. She goes out. There's the scene where she goes out with her boyfriend, I guess. They're not official. They're not Facebook official. Yeah. But
the police deputy.
Yeah. I like his character, too. There's a lot of really good actors in this movie. When they go out into the woods and she brings a knife with, you think she's obviously, like, luring him into it. And that probably was going on in the back of her head. She probably was going to kill him. But then you kind of just believe what's going on there.
Yeah,
I like that.
That's key. And I've said that before, that's key to a lot of horror films, because so many horror movies, including portions of Maniac, depend on characters who we're supposed to root for, supposed to be intelligent, doing dumb things, or things that you can't really buy for the sake of the plot. And you're right, this movie, you could really understand the motivation of all these characters and empathize with them, including the cannibals.
There's another scene where they use that, too, where that I hope I don't spoil anything, because I want people to actually see this one.
Well, I kind of want to talk about the ending a little bit, so...
Yeah, I like... Remember the scene where the dad's essentially the main bad guy.
Yeah.
He's kind of like controlling...
But again, very restrained performance.
Yeah, he was good. He was really good.
Scary. And
there's a scene where he's like Jason, essentially. He's chasing down the remaining kids.
Yeah.
And then he's like... he chases them into a trailer park, I guess?
Yeah, there's an adjacent trailer park to where the family lives.
And then you hear him coming, there's a dog barking, and you hear the dog, like, silenced. Yeah. Like, you're like, holy shit, he just killed this dog. Yeah. And then he bursts down the door, and then the daughter's just, like, sitting on the bed, and he's like, come with me, let's just go home, come on. And then you actually, I did, you kind of buy it. You're like, I think they would probably kind of go with him at that point.
Right.
Even though they had witnessed him, like, just kill someone in front of them.
Right. What else could they really have done at that point?
She knew that he tried to kind of poison them too earlier. Yep. All this is known, but that you still kind of, I don't know. I bought it when he's like asking his son to come here. He's like, just come here, and he's like essentially dying on the floor. He's like, come here, and then he walks out of the trailer with. It's like Jason convincing his victim to come with him. You know, I thought it was.
But it's also their father too. You know, so it's not as simple as like.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, it's a well done movie. I don't think I liked it as much as you did, in the way that I didn't dislike.
Maybe it was because I just saw Maniac.
Did, but I did enjoy it. I agree with everything you say. I think it was very well done, very well acted, beautifully shot, elegantly shot. You know, it's a movie about cannibals, but it's not Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Motel Hell, like you mentioned. This is a very restrained, kind of elegant take on the material. A very intelligent movie. So definitely recommend this one. But I do want to go ahead and just full on spoilers here, because I do kind of want to ask. Well, I do kind of want to ask you. You know, you like this movie so much, and so much of it was so restrained and kind of sophisticated. What did you think about the ending? Like the ending, like how the father.
What part of the ending?
Well, like how the dad eventually dies, like the choice that the daughters make at the very end. That scene, the very end.
I suppose they had earned it by that point.
Okay.
So I kind of went with it.
Yeah. Because it's sort of stylistically out of step with the rest of the film. It's very, like, EC Comics kind of twist.
I feel like they didn't, like, make a misstep there. Because, at the end when the credits roll, there's kind of, like, silly country music playing. Like, they knew they're talking about cannibals, so they knew kind of the audience.
At some point, they knew the audience they were talking to. Some kind of a payoff.
Not necessarily like that, though.
Okay.
But I think I don't know. I guess I bought it at that point. I was kind of with it so much that I was willing to forgive a few of the little things in there.
I think I basically feel the same way. I mean, the last scene, it's very over the top. It's silly in a way, but you're right. Up until that point, it's a good enough movie. And even that scene in and of itself was so weird and so silly, but also creepy and cool in a way.
It's almost like it would have worked better in another movie.
Yeah.
Sort of. Like, the scene itself wasn't bad.
No,
Did it fit? Maybe not.
Yeah.
The same thing, I think, of when they go with flashbacks.
That's the other thing I want to talk to you about.
When they're reading the book, and they cut to the old, like, the Donner Party, essentially, is what
I wish they had lit those scenes differently.
I just, it looks so bad.
Yeah,
it looked like a TV show about settlers.
I agree.
It looked really bad.
That
should have just been reading the passages.
I thought so too. It was such a kind of perfectly constrained, constructed movie that it was really easy to go too far in one direction or another. Mm-hmm. And I think you're right, the flashbacks telling how the family began doing this, it was a little goofy. Just somehow something about the way it
didn't look right.
No, the way they were filmed, the way that it was lit, it was just like it didn't quite fit with. It
looked like they just cut to like a TV series about
and the rest of the movie.
Little House on the Prairie.
The rest of the movie had such a consistent look and tone that was a little out of place. The ending was a little bit out of place, but I didn't dislike it. I liked the ending as well. I think for the same reason as you said, they had kind of earned it up to that point. And, you're watching a cannibal movie, you know? And also you wonder kind of like which way are these girls going to go at the end.
And you still do, actually.
You still do. It's kind of an ambiguous kind of ending, but... they're suggesting that this will probably continue.
But there's also 3 children, so who knows? Like,
I thought the little boy was going to come in at the end and join the girl.
I
totally thought that's where they were going.
I thought he was going to do something really horrific. And I thought I was going
chomp down on
something.
Yeah.
But I thought so too.
I thought so too. Maybe that would be like, they were like, okay, it's a bit too much.
Maybe that's in the director's cut or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you liked that movie because I liked it too. I also like Maniac. You didn't like it as much.
Yeah, because I didn't want to be like. I don't like watching recent horror movies because most of them are crap. And then I saw Maniac and I was like, man,
it's crap.
I was like, that's crap.
Yeah.
And then I saw the next one and I was like, that's probably one of the better horror movies I've seen recently. So,
there's good stuff out
I can justify them still making horror movies. I want them to make horror movies, basically, but I just want it to be, I want to raise the bar a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of back and forth on how I feel about Maniac.
It's not horrible.
No, I didn't think it was. And I didn't, like if somebody told me they really liked the new Maniac, I wouldn't be like, what? Why would you like that? It was so bad.
I might be, but I'd want them to explain why. I wouldn't be like...
But I
at first, I don't think I would get it, really.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I think it was a well-made movie. It just wasn't...
it first did no harm.
It didn't do enough to kind of distinguish itself, perhaps. But I still give that one a mild recommendation. And I guess we both recommend We Are What We Are.
Because it is what it is. No, it isn't what it is.
No,
or is it?
It's a very good movie.
It's a good movie.
That's what it is. So there's a lot of these newer horror films streaming on Netflix right now, including the 2 we watched. So definitely check them out. And I don't know, anything else to say, or I think that pretty much does it.
You can sometimes believe the hype.
Sometimes, in rare occasions, you can believe the hype. Yeah, good stuff out there. Check it out. And I guess that wraps up this episode. So we will be back soon with another episode of Brain Says Strange Things. Check us out on Facebook, and thank you as always for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.